In this video you'll discover the dark secrets behind Hollywood's most dangerous celebrity friendships that will leave you stunned. You'll uncover the shocking truths behind one of the most unlikely partnerships in entertainment history. What you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about how celebrities really interact with America's most notorious criminals. March 1990. Federal Courthouse, Brooklyn, New York. Mickey Rourke, one of Hollywood's most rebellious stars, walked into the most dangerous courtroom in America to support a man who had ordered dozens of murders. What brought these two unlikely figures together would remain a secret for decades. This is the untold story of how Hollywood's bad boy became best friends with the deadliest mob boss in American history. You think you know Mickey Rourke? The boxer turned actor, the rebellious heartthrob who destroyed his own career with violence, drugs, and an attitude that made directors afraid to work with him. But what you don't know is the dangerous friendship that nearly cost him everything. Tonight, you'll discover how a desperate actor's search for authenticity led him into the inner circle of organized crime, and how one act of public loyalty almost made him an enemy of the federal government. September 16, 1952. Schenectady, New York. Philip Andre Rourke Jr. was born into a working-class Irish Catholic family that would move to Miami when he was 6 years old. His father abandoned the family, leaving Mickey to find role models on the rough streets of South Beach. By age 12, Mickey had found his calling in the boxing ring. Fighting as a flyweight, he discovered he had natural talent for violence. Over the next decade, he compiled an impressive amateur record of 27 wins and only 3 defeats, including 12 consecutive first-round knockouts. But Mickey Rourke had dreams bigger than boxing. In 1971, he moved to New York City with $300 in his pocket and a burning desire to become an actor. The transition wasn't easy. Rourke worked as a busboy, a bouncer, and even briefly as a bodyguard while studying acting at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute. His teachers recognized his raw talent, but they also saw something darker, an intensity that bordered on dangerous. By the early 1980s, Rourke had broken into Hollywood with small roles in films like Body Heat and Diner, but it was his performance in Rumblefish that established him as one of the most promising young actors of his generation. Then came the roles that would change his life forever. In 1984, Rourke starred in The Pope of Greenwich Village as Charlie Moran, a small-time Italian-American crook who runs afoul of the local mob. The film required him to understand the mindset of street criminals and their relationship with organized crime. The following year, he took the lead role in Year of the Dragon as Stanley White, a rogue police detective, taking on Chinese organized crime in New York's Chinatown. Again, the role demanded an understanding of criminal psychology and the violent world of organized crime. But Mickey Rourke was a method actor. He didn't just want to play these characters, he wanted to become them, and that meant learning from the real thing. In the late 1980s, as Rourke's career reached its peak, his personal life was spiraling out of control. He was drinking heavily, using drugs, and surrounding himself with what friends described as strippers and lowlifes. His reputation in Hollywood was becoming toxic. Directors complained that he was impossible to work with. Producers worried about his violent temper and unpredictable behavior. Studios began to see him as more trouble than he was worth. But Mickey Rourke had always been drawn to danger. And in New York City during the late 1980s, there was no one more dangerous than John Joseph Gotti. December 16, 1985. Paul Castellano, boss of the Gambino crime family, was gunned down outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. Within weeks, John Gotti had taken control of New York's most powerful organized crime family. Unlike previous mob bosses who preferred to operate in shadows, Gotti courted publicity. He wore expensive suits that cost more than most people made in a year. He held court at the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy, where celebrities, politicians, and wannabe gangsters came to pay their respects. The media called him the Dapper Don and the Teflon Don, because criminal charges never seemed to stick. But people who knew the real John Gotti understood that beneath the designer clothes and charming smile was one of the most ruthless killers in American history. Gotti had murdered his way to the top of the Gambino family. He controlled construction, garbage collection, and drug trafficking throughout New York City. He commanded an army of soldiers who would kill at his command without question, and like many powerful men, John Gotti was fascinated by celebrities. The meeting between Mickey Rourke and John Gotti happened sometime in the late 1980s, though the exact circumstances remain unclear. What is known is that Rourke was preparing for another mob-related role and wanted to understand the authentic world of organized crime. Years later, Rourke would describe their first encounter. "If I wanted to do research on that lifestyle, or whatever you want to call it, he was there for me." For Rourke, it was supposed to be professional research. For Gotti, it was an opportunity to befriend one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The friendship that developed between them was unlike anything either man had experienced before. Rourke got an inside look at the real world of organized crime. While Gotti enjoyed the reflected glamour of Hollywood celebrity, they would meet at expensive restaurants in Manhattan, where Gotti would hold court while Rourke listened and learned. The mob boss would explain the unwritten rules of street life, the psychology of fear and respect that governed criminal organizations. Rourke was fascinated by Gotti's intelligence and charisma. "He's very intelligent and very generous in giving me his time and helping me do my thing," Rourke would later tell reporters. "I do roles that are urban-type roles. He knows that stuff." But their relationship went beyond professional consultation. They genuinely enjoyed each other's company. One evening during the 1990 World Cup, they were watching Italy play Ireland. Rourke, perhaps testing the boundaries of their friendship, offered to bet against Italy, even though Gotti's Italian heritage made the choice obvious. "What do you want to bet? 10 grand? Whatever? Whatever you want to do," Rourke asked. Gotti's response revealed both his affection for the actor and his understanding of proper boundaries. No, I'm never going to take your money. Let's bet watches." Italy was heavily favored, but Ireland won the game. Gotti honored the bet, giving Rourke his expensive watch without complaint. It was this kind of gesture that convinced Rourke that John Gotti was different from the violent criminal the media portrayed. He saw him as a loyal friend, a man of his word, someone who treated him with respect and generosity. But Mickey Rourke's friendship with John Gotti would soon be tested in the most public way possible. January 23, 1990. John Gotti was arrested on federal racketeering charges. The indictment accused him of ordering multiple murders, running illegal gambling operations, and controlling construction contracts through violence and intimidation. The case was assigned to the Eastern District Federal Court in Brooklyn, and it quickly became the most watched criminal trial in New York City history. For John Gotti, the trial was about more than legal vindication. It was about respect, reputation, and maintaining his image as the untouchable Don who could beat any case the government brought against him. Gotti's defense team understood that public perception would be crucial to their strategy. They needed to humanize their client, to show the jury that John Gotti was more than just a cold-blooded killer. That's where the celebrity supporters came in. The courthouse took on a circus-like atmosphere during the trial. Gotti loyalists Carlo Vaccarezza and Louis Kazman orchestrated elaborate public relations campaigns, bringing in celebrity cheerleaders to provide testimonials about the much-maligned Gambino boss to the news media. Actor Anthony Quinn showed up to support Gotti, telling reporters that the mob boss had been very nice to me and very kind to me. John Amos from the television show Good Times described Gotti as fascinating. Even Al Lewis, who played Grandpa Munster, made appearances at the courthouse. But the most surprising celebrity supporter was Mickey Rourke. March 16, 1992. Mickey Rourke walked into the federal courthouse in Brooklyn to attend John Gotti's murder trial. The actor's presence immediately created a media sensation. Reporters swarmed Rourke as he entered the building, demanding to know why Hollywood's bad boy was supporting America's most notorious gangster. "I was in the neighborhood, so I stopped by," Rourke told the press with characteristic nonchalance. But when pressed for more details about his relationship with the defendant, Rourke became surprisingly candid. "He's very intelligent and very generous in giving me his time and helping me do my thing," Rourke explained. "I do roles that are urban-type roles. He knows that stuff." The actor's words sent shockwaves through both Hollywood and law enforcement. Here was a major movie star publicly praising a man who was on trial for murder, openly admitting to a personal relationship with one of America's most wanted criminals. Inside the courtroom, Gotti acknowledged Rourke's presence with a quick wave before taking his seat at the defense table. The gesture was subtle, but it spoke volumes about the genuine friendship between the two men. Photographers captured images of Rourke sitting with Carlo Vaccarezza, who operated one of Gotti's restaurants and served as a liaison between the mob boss and his celebrity supporters. The pictures would later appear in newspapers across the country, cementing Rourke's association with organized crime. But Mickey Rourke's public support for John Gotti came at a terrible time for both men. By 1992, the federal government had built an airtight case against John Gotti. FBI surveillance equipment hidden in the Ravenite Social Club and an apartment above it had captured hundreds of hours of incriminating conversations. The tapes revealed Gotti discussing murders, ordering violence against rivals, and bragging about his ability to corrupt juries and intimidate witnesses. Most damaging of all, the recordings showed Gotti expressing contempt for his own underboss, Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano. When Gravano heard those tapes, he realized that Gotti was planning to have him killed. In a desperate bid for survival, the underboss agreed to cooperate with the federal government. Gravano's testimony was devastating. Over 9 days on the witness stand, he admitted to participating in 19 murders, most of them ordered or approved by John Gotti. He described in graphic detail how the Gambino family operated, how they controlled construction contracts through violence, and how they eliminated anyone who threatened their operations. The jury deliberated for less than 14 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. On June 23, 1992, John Gotti was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. The judge's words were uncompromising. "The defendant is a violent, ruthless leader of a criminal enterprise who has shown no remorse for his crimes." Outside the courthouse, Gotti's son John Jr. organized a small riot, with supporters chanting "Free John Gotti," while police officers struggled to maintain order. Mickey Rourke was not among the protesters. By then the actor had begun to understand the true cost of his friendship with John Gotti. The backlash against Rourke was swift and severe. Hollywood executives, already wary of his reputation for difficult behavior, now saw him as a liability with dangerous criminal associations. Movie offers dried up almost overnight. Studios that had once competed for his services now refused to return his agent's phone calls. Insurance companies, worried about the actor's connections to organized crime, began demanding higher premiums for films that wanted to hire him. Rourke's career, already damaged by his own self-destructive behavior, was now in complete free fall. For years afterward, whenever reporters asked about his relationship with John Gotti, Rourke would respond with a simple, "No comment." He understood that any discussion of their friendship would only make his situation worse, but the damage had already been done. Hollywood's golden boy had become an untouchable, destroyed by his loyalty to a friend who turned out to be everything the government said he was. John Gotti spent the last 10 years of his life in solitary confinement at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado. The man who had once been the most powerful crime boss in America died alone in his cell on June 10. Mickey Rourke eventually rebuilt his career, earning critical acclaim for his performance in The Wrestler and other films, but he never fully recovered from the association with organized crime that had nearly destroyed him. In interviews years later, Rourke would finally open up about his relationship with John Gotti. He insisted that their friendship had been based on professional research for his acting roles. Nothing more. I had a relationship with John that was like if I wanted to do research on that lifestyle or whatever you want to call it, he was there for me, Rourke explained. But the World Cup gambling story, the expensive dinners, the courtroom support, all of these suggested something deeper than professional consultation. They suggested genuine friendship between two men from very different worlds, who found something in each other that they couldn't find anywhere else. The story of Mickey Rourke and John Gotti is a cautionary tale about the price of loyalty and the dangerous allure of authentic experience. It reminds us that in the pursuit of artistic truth, some friendships can cost everything. For Mickey Rourke, the search for authenticity led him into a world where loyalty was measured by willingness to risk everything for a friend. When the moment came to choose between his career and his friendship, he chose friendship. It nearly destroyed him. The relationship between Mickey Rourke and John Gotti represents a unique moment in American culture, when the lines between entertainment and organized crime became dangerously blurred. It was a time when celebrities could still maintain friendships with notorious criminals without immediate consequences, when the glamour of the mob still held appeal for those seeking excitement and authenticity. But it also marked the end of an era. After Gotti's conviction, federal law enforcement made it clear that anyone who associated with organized crime figures would face intense scrutiny. The days when celebrities could befriend mob bosses with impunity were over. The FBI had been watching both men for years. Rourke's name appeared in surveillance reports documenting his visits to mob-controlled restaurants and social clubs. Federal agents briefed their superiors on the unusual friendship between Hollywood's bad boy and America's most notorious gangster. For law enforcement officials, Rourke's public support of Gotti represented something more dangerous than simple celebrity fascination with criminals. It suggested that organized crime had successfully infiltrated Hollywood, potentially gaining influence over the entertainment industry that could be used for money laundering or other criminal enterprises. The investigation into Rourke's activities continued for months after Gotti's conviction. Federal agents interviewed his friends, associates and business partners, trying to determine the extent of his involvement with organized crime. They found no evidence of criminal activity, but the investigation itself became another factor in his career decline. Mickey Rourke learned this lesson the hard way. His friendship with John Gotti cost him years of his career and his reputation in Hollywood. But in a strange way, it also gave him something that many actors never achieve: the knowledge that he had been willing to sacrifice everything for loyalty to a friend. The cost was enormous. Studios that had once competed for his services now treated him as radioactive. Insurance companies demanded higher premiums for any production that wanted to hire him. Directors who had once praised his talent now refused to work with him. But perhaps most painfully, Rourke discovered that very few people in Hollywood understood the concept of loyalty that had motivated his support for Gotti. In an industry built on networking and self-promotion, the idea of risking one's career for a friend seemed incomprehensible. The boxing skills that Rourke had learned as a teenager became his salvation. In 1991, desperate to rebuild his life and his finances, he returned to the ring as a professional boxer. For the next 3 years, he fought 8 professional bouts, earning enough money to survive while his acting career remained in ruins. The physical punishment he absorbed in the boxing ring left him with facial injuries that required multiple reconstructive surgeries. But the emotional punishment of being ostracized by Hollywood was far more devastating. Whether that knowledge was worth the price he paid is a question only Mickey Rourke can answer. Years later, when Rourke finally achieved his comeback with The Wrestler, critics noted that his performance carried an authenticity that seemed to come from personal experience with loss, betrayal, and the cost of loyalty. Perhaps his friendship with John Gotti, despite its terrible consequences, had taught him something about human nature that informed his greatest artistic achievement. The story of Mickey Rourke and John Gotti reminds us that authenticity always comes with a price, And sometimes that price is higher than anyone could have imagined. If this story of respect, reputation, and what happens when Hollywood meets the mob fascinated you, hit that subscribe button. We're diving into the hidden connections between America's biggest stars and its most dangerous criminals. The threats that were never reported, the secrets that powerful people thought would stay buried forever. Drop a like if you understand that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they're threatening your life. More explosive stories coming next.